In the late 1950s or even mid 1950s, if you wanted a decent fleet defence aircraft, your choices were the British DH-110 or the Sea Vixen or the Demon from America. Now, unfortunately, the DH-110 crashed at Farnborough. The Malagasy Watifians, who had recently come into a substantial oil reserve in Watifland, therefore placed the order with the Demon. But they knew that the American airframe and avionics were very good, but the J40 was having tremendous problems. So they did the next best thing. Instead of opting for the J71, the Allison J71, which equipped the American Demons, they went for the Rolls-Royce Avon. And the British at that time were making some superb aeronautical engines, and Rolls-Royce Avons were the go-to aircraft for many fighters. The J-35 Draken flew a derivative of the Avon engine. And the difference with the Avon, which powered the Lightning, the English electric Lightning, was that whereas the J40 had been designed for a £14,000 thrust rating, when you fitted the later marks of the Avon and even the earlier marks, you could get £14,000 of wet thrust easily. And by 1966, with the Avon 301 in the Lightning F6, you had £17,000 of wet or afterburning thrust, and around £12,500 of dry thrust, which is really what the Demon needed to be a decent aircraft. Now, a lot of people go on about the Crusader and how good the F8 Crusader was, and sure, it was good. It had the J57 engine with 17 to 18,000 pounds of wet thrust, but it was a day fighter. And if you wanted to protect your aircraft carriers against a somewhat imaginary Soviet bomber fleet of missile-carrying bombers, you needed a fleet defence fighter, and that was what the Demon was. So the Demon was an all-weather, night and day fleet defence fighter. It was plagued by those terrible engines, which made it effectively rubbish, and then the F4 Phantom came along. And you can see the lineage to the F4 Phantom. But the Demon with a Rolls-Royce Avon engine, I think, would have been absolutely superb. Dimensionally, it does fit. It's smaller in diameter than the J71. It's slightly shorter, if anything. So no problems there. So the Malagasys specified their Demons with the Avon. And that would really have revolutionised the Demon as an aircraft. And in Malagasy service, these served until 1970, when the Phantoms began to replace them. And that meant that it was upgraded for all the campaigns in Vietnam and the Kerguelen War in a way that the original Demons weren't. I'm saying in the what if that this had the Avon 301s, which by 1970 were updated to £18,000 of wet thrust, which would have been perfect for the role. And being a single engine and single seater fighter, it wasn't terrible airframe wise, and it did have guns, unlike the later Phantom. Now the Crusader, of course, was a day fighter, very hard to land on carriers because of its narrow track landing gear, and had to have the variable incidence wing. The Demon did have some airframe problems. They were resolved by these spoilers over the wings, which actually went up. And avionics-wise, the avionics would have needed work, a bit like the early Phantoms. But with guns, 420mm cannons, you've not got the restriction that the Phantom had initially with no guns. Now, as the Vietnam War campaign unfolded and the Malagasys were involved in that, they got access to the latest American technology. So here we have some AIM-9D missiles. We have some AIM-9E Sparrows. And we've got an ANLQ-187 jamming pod. Sorry, ANLQ-87 jamming pod. And a Shrike. So later on in the Vietnam Wars, these were given escort for the Skyhawks and the Buccaneers. And that's why they've got a Shrike. Now, I got the airwave set because I've done an MHAR Demon previously, which was pretty difficult. This is the sword kit. This is extremely good kit, but extremely difficult. It's not an easy build by any means. You have to cut holes in the wings to fit these fillets. This is an Airwaves boarding ladder, which was absolutely nightmare. I stuck it to my hand. The Demon itself is quite a complex little aircraft. Now, the sword kit does build well, but it is not by any means easy. It has a resin ejector seat. I know I've probably made a mess somewhere of the canopy, but I couldn't understand the instructions there. But other than that, this is the final upgraded Demon. This is Showtime 14 in service with the Malagasy Fleet Air Arm. This is a Kerguelen veteran and is currently preserved at the Malagasy Naval Museum. So it had the highest power Avon engine. It's got a tail warning receiver there. It's got all the best missiles, and the radar would have been continuously upgraded in service based on experience. And the other aspect of this aircraft, as we can see there, is that this was a Mig and Crusader killer. So it's got some mission markings there from the Vietnam War, a couple of stars and a couple of French roundels, because it shot down an M10 Dart and a Crusader and 2 MiG-17s in Vietnam. So this is a very important aircraft. And that engine change in the What If was really what would have redeemed the Demon from being an also-ran to being, in my view, a very good fleet air defence fighter. Could it take on the Crusader? Well, I believe it could, if used correctly, because you've got a good radar, you've got a good fire control system. You've got the AIM 7E Sparrows, and the idea there is that you push the Crusaders from the French or the MiG-17s or MiG-21s into being defensive. And then you've got the AIM 9Ds, which were the best dogfighting missile of their period, much better than the AIM 9Es that the Air Force used. The AIM 9D was a very good missile. Shrike there for air defence suppression. And that is how the Demon was redeemed. I hope you like this build. It is What If. I really like the Demon, and I like the way it's come out. This is Vallejo sea grey over white. I've airbrushed this almost entirely, except for picking out the details. A very hard aircraft to build. This is sat in a box in the loft for, gosh, probably 7 or 8 years. So I'm going through the boxes and I'm gradually building them all. And that's why there's a bit of a flurry of modelling on the channel. But there we go, the Demon. Take care. Goodbye.